Hello, my name is Jasmine Hammis, and my dissertation topic is bilingual programming for English learners in rural high schools. Before I get into the details of my topic, I wanted to define a couple key terms when discussing bilingual program and support for English learners in rural high schools. To begin, I'd like to define rural school districts. I'm using the Wisconsin Department of Instruction definition that's based on location as opposed to school size. Rural school districts are districts that are less than or equal to 5 miles from an urbanized area or less than or equal to 2.5 miles from an urban cluster. Second, I'd like to talk about bilingual programs and the characteristics of those. There are different types of bilingual programs. Some of the common ones are dual immersion, early exit, or late exit. The commonality between all of these programs is that they offer courses taught in the English learner's home language. For example, a math class might be taught in Spanish, or a social studies class might be taught in Russian. That's the student's home language. These classes are taught in that home language while the student continues to receive instruction in English and typically some other academic classes in English. The other term I'd like to discuss is bilingual supports. These are materials or support systems provided to English learners as they take courses taught in English. For example, a student may receive a text in English, but then also the same text in that student's home language to help with the vocabulary understanding and development. Another type of bilingual support is receiving assistance from a bilingual educator or an educational assistant that speaks that student's home language. So why is this topic important? Well, our English learner population in Wisconsin is growing. It's growing across the United States. Specifically in high schools, it's been on a steady increase. In 2014-15, we had about 7,000 English learners in our Wisconsin high schools. Those are the public high schools. And in 1920, we had about close to 11,000 English learners in our high schools. This topic is also important because extensive research shows that the most effective model for achieving both academic achievement and English proficiency is through bilingual education. If you think about it, providing student support in their home language, especially at the high school level when content is more rigorous, helps them develop understanding for that content while the student continues to develop their English proficiency. For example, if a student is learning the process of photosynthesis, if we only provide English materials, the student is expected to learn what photosynthesis is and learn the English that goes with that photosynthesis language. However, if we provide the content in that student's home language, they're able to use that to help help understand the concept, and they can bridge it to learning and developing their English proficiency. The last point that I have is that rural schools are less likely to provide bilingual programming or supports than suburban and urban schools. I haven't done extensive research about this, but I imagine that part has to do with finances and also access to resources, such as hiring bilingual teachers. So my research questions. First, what bilingual programming and supports do rural public high schools provide groups of 20 or more English learners of the same home language? I chose to do focus on high schools that have 20 or more students of the same home language because per DPI, Wisconsin DPI requirements, those high schools are required by state statute to provide bilingual instruction. High schools that have less than 20 English learners that speak the same home language are not required to provide that bilingual support. And it also makes it a lot more challenging, both in finance and resources, to provide those supports for such a small amount of students. So we're looking at bigger groups of English learners and how we're supporting them in the home language. And my second question is, what challenges do rural high schools encounter in implementing and improving bilingual programming and supports for those populations? So what have they tried, and what has worked and what hasn't, and what sort of roadblocks have they found, and what also are their successes? So my method, ideally I would like to do a qualitative case study. So the population would be either one, or if I can get more, 1 to 3 rural high schools that have enrolled that minimum threshold of 20 or more English learners of the same home language. The other component that I would like to add is that I would like a school that has had that population for approximately 4 or more consecutive years. Schools that have had that size population for less than 4 years are less likely to have explored bilingual options and won't have as much data to provide in terms of what have they tried and what challenges do they face. So my data, I'm thinking of documenting a documentation of the bilingual program planning. So what board meetings have they done? What administrative meetings have they done? Have they worked with CSUP programmings? What have they done to plan for the bilingual programming? Things like lists of bilingual resources that include materials or lists of bilingual staff. I think it would be interesting also to look at student schedules. Do they have classes in their home language, or do they have a study hall with bilingual aids? From an HR perspective and just access to resources and people, bilingual people, what is their history of successful hiring of bilingual staff? Is this something that they have struggled with or they have not struggled with? And lastly, I'd also like to interview administrators and multilingual teachers to learn about their perspective of how to best support their English learners through bilingual programming and supports. And the purpose of this qualitative case study would be to describe how the rural high school has implemented bilingual programming and supports, and to understand the why behind their decisions. So in thinking about the validity of my study, these are three ways that I thought I could strengthen the validity of my qualitative study. First would be through triangulation. I'm going to be using, or I hope to use, multiple sources of data. And so I could use different coding strategies to find the common themes of, Okay, I could find, technical difficulties. There we go, okay. So through triangulation, doing different coding strategies to see if the same themes are extracted from using the different strategies. The other strategy I could use is member checking, circling back to the administrators and the educators interviewed to ensure that their experiences are clearly and accurately communicated in my study. And also reflecting, understanding that I have biases and I have expectations for bilingual education because I am a bilingual educator. And so doing some journaling and having discussions with my advisors about how that impacts how I perceive the data. And that is the foundation for my study. Thank you for taking the time of watching this.